I think it's still early on. I think one of the big questions, and I'm curious to hear what Dave says, he wasn't a minor. He was 20. I wonder if that changes things slightly. I don't know. I'll be watching. Hey, listen, happy Easter.
It may.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Yeah, have a great weekend. It's your show. Take it away, Chris.
All right. You too, Elizabeth. Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to News Nation. I have my Paschal pink on. Easter is Sunday, and its message of rebirth and renewal. A beautiful and universal motivation. Lord knows I need it, and many of you feel as I do. So, rebirth and renewal to you, brothers and sisters. Now, you may have noticed, we most often apply this hope, this aspiration for change to the individual. But the idea, the projection, the destiny is every bit as applicable to the we as to the me, as in society. And I think we, the people, as a polity, as a society, need rebirth and renewal as the active pursuit of a more perfect union indeed. Now, of course, tonight we're going to take on the Garcia case, the Metcalf stabbing, the Tallahassee mass shooting, and the potential dead end in Ukraine. And all of them matter individually as well as part of the overall reason for the division in America. But I must say, I do believe both poison political parties handpick, exaggerate, and obsess, yes, with the help of the media, on situations like these to prioritize some kind of real or perceived advantage. And in so doing, they are finding ways to divide us when there is a much more powerful and obvious unifying cause. And in that way, they are each and all a distraction from what our government should be fixated on. The highest target for the manifestation of the Easter mandate for us, rebirthing our middle class by renewing our way of balancing who gets to cash in on us as the most dominant consumer market in the history of the world and how we benefit by it. Not just those doing the selling, especially when they left here to make it somewhere else to our great, great detriment. Now, this is much harder than any of the other topics. Arguing about perceived bad hombres or guns or violence or some other boogeyman. They're all attempts to show what is wrong. And more so, which side is worse on any rebirth and renewal of how we balance American families, of the corporate class. That's tough. That's about solutions. That's about taking on the powerful, the people who put money in the politicians' pockets. That's hard. So even when it is mentioned, poked at, that's all it is, a poke and a retreat. President Trump, I argue to you, is a one-trick pony with tariffs. No, it's not too soon to say that. Of course, there's a long way to go, and taking on China or any of the attendant dynamics is the right move. But we already know there is no more strategic solution at play than what he has said already. He has the target right, taking on China, and tariffs are a tool, but they are a blunt instrument, and they are only one tool in what is necessarily a box of many. What are they? He's got to figure it out. But there clearly hasn't been any forethought of what to do other than what comes naturally to Trump, which is to be aggressive and go big. Okay? But for the right, you're more than a tariff or a tax cut away. And for the left, you're more than a tax increase and a government program away from restoring this. There will be no easy, simple shortcut. Okay? See, that's why tariffs are more tactic than even a tax. And that's why Trump kept pulling back, especially when his donors got on him about it. So in the interest of rebirth and renewal, let us at least all come to common ground about the need for change. And let me start by saying, while China is the proof of the problem, they only did what America and the World Trade Organization enabled them to do. Don't hate the player, only hate the game. 2001, we all think 9/11. Certainly focused us on terror, but our obsession with Islamists distracted us from the financial terror that would hurt millions of Americans for decades to come. That is when China joined the WTO, 2001. Now, the convenient pivot away from this, and you'll see it online in response to what I'm saying right now, is, well, why doesn't he blame the Democrats? It's all going to be about political blame. And that is a great salvo. It's a great jab. Bing! Must be the Democrats. Why? Bill Clinton was in control. See, that's what Trumpers people are saying about why they've got to deal with China, right? It was Clinton. And you know what? They're right. But he didn't do it alone, did he? If you go back and look, sure, he negotiated aspects of it, but it wasn't unilateral. And for America to even be in part of a deal with China, what did they need? Activating legislation, something called PNTR, Permanent Normal Trade Relations. And you know what that required? Congress. And you know what they did? They voted on it. And do you know who wanted to pass it? A lot more Republicans than Democrats in the House and the Senate. Fact. They don't sell that to me on Twitter, though. I know, because it's not convenient. So don't let them divide us on who got us here. And let's talk about how to get the hell out of here, okay? A serious and obvious common concern. We just need to agree that what was birthed at that time now needs a rebirth and renewal in a much different form. Again, the proof of the problem is clear. Data. In the 70s, the middle class earned 60% of the income in the U.S., and the wealthy earned just under 30. After China joined the WTO in 2001, the wealthy started earning more of the income in this country than the middle class. In the 70s, 1 in 5 worked in manufacturing. After China joined the WTO, the number of manufacturing jobs plummeted by the millions, and today, only 1 in 10 work in manufacturing, and yet America is still the second largest manufacturer on the planet, despite having so much of its potential taken by corporate gluttons who fled to China with cheap labor, lack of regulations, or environmental concerns, or regard for the people doing the work. And they made billions for themselves, and just as importantly, they took from millions of Americans and left a big hole in the American job market, millions of jobs deep. In the 70s, CEOs made 20 times more than their workers. It's plenty. Throughout the 90s, started to grow, but nothing like what happened after China joined the WTO. Extremely high, exponentially high. Look at it. I mean, you tell me. That has to be what capitalism is. That's what it is. That's the only definition. Fact, in 1990, China was the 8th largest manufacturing country. After the WTO, in less than a decade, China was enabled to erase over a half century of American manufacturing supremacy. Look, as China's manufacturing grew, take a look at their extreme poverty rate. Look at it. Now look at ours. I mean, are you serious? It's all tied to this move. The Chinese sell us what we need, not just cheap stuff, the technological tools of life and the materials we need to make what we need for ourselves. They have trained up their people more than we have to do sophisticated jobs that they have that we were supposed to have that could secure a generation. The question is, for whom? For China or for America? They are getting us coming and going literally. And it was America, America, America that allowed it. And Americans who gave away our potential to them. So while I will take on the other stories of the day, okay, when it comes to this most holy occasion and its divine promise of rebirth and renewal, let us focus it where it matters the most, on all of us, and what would benefit the most of us. Let us recognize the need for rebirth of what drove the prosperity in America, and let us insist on a renewal of focus and effort on the people who say they want to lead us, to reject the temptation to find ways to keep us distracted and divided, and instead make things right. Now, there's obviously a lot going on, okay? And I see answers much more obviously than I do to this major concern that I just outlined. And I'll start with what's happening, I guess you could say, in El Salvador, because that's where this guy Garcia is. And I don't know, maybe he's going to stay there, but that is not what the law is in our country. No way. It's not even a close call. That's why the Supreme Court was 9-0. Now, I have a legal issue and a political issue. On the political side, this Democrat senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, posts this picture of him meeting with the guy at like a restaurant. This is a bad look, man. If you want to make this guy the hill to die on for Democrats, like he is the picture of America's freedom stolen, you had to know that this was going to not look great, okay? He does not look like he's struggling, this guy. Look at the glassware. El Salvador's president immediately seized on the opportunity. Now, did they yank him out of a prison and bring him here? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Perception's reality, okay? And he made this snarky tweet. So that's the politics of it, all right? So you got the law and you got the politics. And now a gift that only NewsNation makes happen. You have Democrats and Republicans at each other's throats about this. Not on this show, not at NewsNation. Here, we come together to talk together. So let's bring in Democrat, Arizona, member of Congress, Yassam Ansari, and Republican from Utah, from Congress, obviously, as well, Mike Kennedy. Good to see you both. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Chris, thanks for having me.
So I got a legal problem.
Happy Easter to you and I got Representative Ansari.
Thank you very much. Rebirth and renewal, my brother. So let's do law and politics. We'll do law first. Congressman Kennedy, you know as well or better than I do what the Supreme Court ruled. We'll put it up for the audience, okay? You may feel otherwise about what the facts suggest about Mr. Garcia or the realistic nature of the threat in El Salvador to him. But the Supreme Court made it very clear. There is a legitimate withholding of deportation, federal order, and you have to obey it. You can come in and re-argue it. That's part of the law with withholding deportation, but the administration is not doing that. Do you agree with their ignoring of the Supreme Court's directive?
Chris, thanks for having me on. I was just in that prison 3 days ago, and I know Representative Ansari is planning on going next week. It is one of the most terrifying places that I've ever been, and I've been in the death chamber witnessing an execution of a state prisoner. I've been there. I'm a medical doctor, and I've been there when people have coded and had medical emergencies. I've seen some pretty terrible things in my lifetime. That prison is terrifying to criminals, and it is a grim place. There's 80 people in each cell, stacked 3 and 4 high. I'd have to look at the steel beds to make clear on that. These people, once they go in that building, they will never get out. And when it comes to this individual who is admittedly erroneously sent, due process is a process. And that process is in process right now. In fact, the Supreme Court has determined that the Trump administration needs to facilitate his return. And until President Bukele from El Salvador disgorges that individual, that Pam Bondi said, send a plane if they disgorge him and we'll facilitate his removal. But he's in the hands of a sovereign nation right now.
Do you know whether or not, Congressman, whether the Trump administration has asked the El Salvador president to return him?
I am not aware of that, although I'll say to all of us that it's really interesting that the senator who was denied admission the day after myself and several other congressmen were visiting inside that prison, but the senator did actually have a chance to visit with this individual, reflecting the fact that there's something going on that's underneath the media's reports at this point.
Right, but let's just deal with what we can all see. You agree that the administration should have to respect the federal order, bring this guy before a judge, and re-argue the matter. Re-argue it if you don't agree with
at this point, the U.S. Supreme Court has said he needs to be facilitated and returned to the United States, and that facilitation it depends on President Bukele in El Salvador at this point.
Well, yes, but if Trump were to ask him to return the guy, he would, and we both know it. They're just not asking because he doesn't want him back. And that's the same thing as violating, is it not?
Trump and Bukele have a strong relationship, and there's some collaboration between those two.
Well, at least I get you understand. You acknowledge that they are supposed to bring him back. because that's what the law demands. Because now they're starting to do the same thing, it seems, in the other case with the Alien Enemies Act. You've got to afford due process. They're two most important words in the law. So the legal side is pretty clear. What I don't get is the political play. And that's where I want to bring you in for the rest of the interview, Representative Ansari. You are right on the law in this case, okay? You have high ground. However, I don't understand the Democrats going to these lengths for this particular guy. Why do you want to be seen as though this guy, who may well be an MS-13 gang member, is like the guy you want to die for, going down to this hellhole in El Salvador? Why?
So I believe that this case is incredibly important, not just because of Kilmar Garcia himself, but because of what he represents. The fact that the President of the United States is willing to openly defy a Supreme Court order. And as my colleague acknowledged, it is actually up to, or he did not acknowledge, it is up to our president, Donald Trump, the United States, according to the Supreme Court, to facilitate this. It would take one phone call from Donald Trump, one ask to say, get this guy back here because he should be afforded due process. I'm going to follow by the Supreme Court's order to do that. If we let this moment go by and allow the administration to just outright defy our Constitution, then we are full blown in an authoritarian regime that will go further. They've made it very clear in that same Oval Office meeting with Bukele. He said homegrowns are next. I mean, this should terrify every single American. I have not gotten more calls on an issue in my office as a congresswoman than I have on this one. And I represent a district with many immigrants, a very diverse district of immigrants and refugees. People are terrified. I mean, in my own district, people have been wrongfully detained. This is a massive problem that needs to end. So I think more and more members need to stand up for what's happening and travel to make the case.
Well, for what's happening, I'm with you, okay? For what's happening, I'm with you. Due process matters. And I live in a place that is very rich with diversity, and a lot of the people here who are doing the work of this community are not here legally. But I got to tell you, they do not see themselves in Garcia because he is likely a gangbanger who had, a domestic problem with his wife. They do not see themselves when they look at him. And I don't understand why you just don't argue the law instead of kind of making a George Floyd play with this guy like he's some kind of patron saint of due process.
Chris, and I'll point out that the big problem we have here is 10 to 15 million.
Wait, hold on, Congressman. Let me have the Democrat come in. Go ahead, Yasim.
It's very important to note that Mr. Garcia has not been convicted of any crime. I mean, the fact that he's being villainized to this extent when there is no conviction, the administration in court has not provided any of this, and a judge has not convicted him of a crime. We have to remember that. That's incredibly important. I know many people who see themselves in this situation.
That's a crime.
But a court multiple years ago under the Trump administration said he's prohibited to be sent back to El Salvador. That's a fact.
He's also got MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles, on his hand, that President Trump pointed out to the country. In addition to the fact that he's a wife beater, the reality is due process is in process, and this man needs to be facilitated.
Here,
but a sovereign nation cannot be forced to disgorge this individual until
that's not what due process
Bukele agrees to do that.
I'm sorry, due process is not in process.
You both have a point. You both have a point
here. In this country, we need to bring him back.
You both have a point. The due process has to happen here. The Supreme Court 9-0, most of whom were picked by this president, and we know, with all due respect to the High Court, which is not that much these days, they don't want to say any ruling that's going to piss off the president if they don't have to, and yet they did. But at the same time, the Democrats have to think, if you're making it about the person or you're making it about the principle. If you make it about the principle, I think you've got high ground. You make it about the person, I don't understand it as well, but I appreciate you both arguing the point. If you go down there, Representative, please stay safe. We need our leaders, and we need them healthy. And if you want to talk to me from down there, Yasmin, just let me know, and I'll make time for you in the show as soon as you want, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, be safe, though. You heard what the doctor said about this place. This is not a great place where you're going, no matter what the president says.
The law. That's true.
Terrifying place where
but I'm just saying,
criminals are.
Someone
not convicted should not be there.
El Salvador is not Florida. That's all I'm saying. Congressman Kennedy, best to you. Thank you for being on. And please stay safe, Representative Ansari. I don't want you to become the news. I want to be you part of the political advocacy of the news. So stay safe. I'll speak to you soon. Kennedy, thank you. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Coming up. I mean it. You know, these places, you go down there, I don't care what Bukele says about El Salvador. All right? I know people there. I know what's going on there. It's no place to just go without security. All right, a member of law enforcement. Did she leave her weapon unlocked and unattended? Why is that not an important issue? Is it the law? Should it be the law? All right? Because if we don't start holding people accountable, this will never change.
Eichner, and he's a son of a Leon County Sheriff deputy. There's no cause right now that we're aware of that require her to be placed on any kind of suspension or otherwise.
All right, well, that's what I want to talk with. But first of all, touche, well played. I just told the representative, be careful about going to El Salvador. It's not Florida, trying to say it's not that safe a place. And a bunch of you hit me with, what are you talking about? There was just a mass shooting down there in Parkland and the Pulse. And you're right. You're right. Even Florida is not Florida anymore. It's hard to find a safe place. You're right. So this 20-year-old kid, the junior, who opened up fire on the FSU campus, stepson of a sheriff's deputy, okay? Is that making the case go differently? It's one question. He used her weapon to kill two people, right? Robert Morales, the university faculty dining coordinator, and Tiru Chaba, the father of two, a vendor at the university. Also injured 6 others. So how did he get the weapon? Is it supposed to be locked? If not, why not? And what does this mean in terms of the availability of responsibility for the deputy? I got Jennifer Coffindaffer of FBI fame, of course, and Dave Ehrenberg, okay, state attorney in Florida, understands the politics and the law amalgam down there very, very well. First, happy holy days for you, Ehrenberg, rebirth and renewal for you, Coffindaffer. So, Dave, what's the law?
Well, it's good to be back with you, my friend. The law in Florida says you only need to lock up your weapon if there's someone 15 or younger in the household. So someone who's 20 years old will not qualify under that. But if you act in a reckless manner, for example, if the stepmom here knew that her stepson was a ticking time bomb and gave him a gun or left it out so easily that he could take it at any time, then possibly she could be charged with involuntary manslaughter. But that assumes facts not in existence. And I think it's very unlikely that there'll be any additional criminal charges here unless we find there's an accomplice. I think much more likely will be civil liability. I think you'll see a lot of civil lawsuits to come.
But should you guys think about the law down there? I mean, this happens way too often, Dave, where somebody gets a weapon that they really shouldn't have had access to. And I know, look, maybe it's a New York thing, but I am like, and most of my friends who own weapons, we are obsessed with securing the weapon. You know what I mean? Like, where's the trigger lock? You sure the trigger lock's on it? How do you have it in the mount? And where's the key? Don't tell anybody where the key is. You know, don't you think that kind of legislation matters?
Yes, it could. The NRA is very powerful in Florida and would oppose and stop any additional legislation. In fact, Governor DeSantis is trying to undo the limited number of gun laws that were passed after the Parkland massacre. So don't expect any new laws to come after this. As far as the civil liability, though, there will be lawsuits because it's relatively easy to prove negligence. It's a violation of a duty of care compared to a criminal charge of culpable negligence or involuntary manslaughter, where you need to prove something more than simple negligence, a recklessness, and then beyond a reasonable doubt. So although we've seen charges against the parents in Michigan, the Crumbly case, that was involving a minor, not a 20-year-old, and that was involving parents who knew their son was deeply troubled and bought him a gun. We don't know those facts here in this case.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Dave. Coffindaffer. What are your issues that you see in this, and why is the FBI involved?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, this is highly negligent. She was a law enforcement officer for 18 years. If you own a gun, the only person that can have access to that gun should be you, not your spouse, not your children, not anyone else. And she well knew this. This is 101 when it comes to gun ownership. So I have a huge issue with it. Although I agree with Dave, it's likely going to be settled civilly, not criminally. But we don't know what text messages will be found. We don't know if she knew he was a ticking time bomb. So I do think it's a little premature to really know what she did know and what she didn't know.
Is that why the FBI is looking into it, because the local police or the state is conflicted?
No, the FBI is involved in this as a police cooperation matter. They are offering all of their resources. This is a huge case involving a lot of witness interviews. There's going to be digital information that needs to be looked at. And they opened up that tip line, Chris. They do such a great job of triaging tips and getting them settled quickly.
But what is the universe of possibility of what you want to find out about this guy other than him being attached to an association with a larger objective?
Well, it's really important to understand motive. Even though it's not an element of the law, Dave, I think you'll agree, and Chris, you too, the jury wants to hear that. And they are going to want to do a deep dive into why in the world this occurred and if anybody else was connected or knew about it in any way.
You point out that you feel that he was well trained. Why is that relevant?
I think it's relevant because if you watch him, when he gets the firearm, he knows to stop, take a stance, and take aim. That's unusual in most of these school shootings. They kind of just pray and spray, but that isn't what we saw here with him. And that shows me he likely had some training in his role as a police officer. And I think that's really concerning. I think we need to look at that.
Yeah, it's also Florida, not like Westchester. You know what I mean? Like they're a lot more familiar with weapons down there. It couldn't be made any easier for them. Dave Arenberg, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Jennifer Coffindaffer, appreciate you both. Thank you very much. To be continued. And again, I'm not a no guns, no guns. I'm a gun owner. I'm just saying that gun safety and gun ownership are like this. And if there's any separation, I don't know how anybody think anything can be safe. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Coming up, President Trump has made a lot of promises. One of the most important was to end the war in Ukraine day one, okay? Now, it seems like they may walk away from the situation. Is this yet another Trump bluff? And if it's not, then what? Two very good voices of what this means to you and me. Next. To end the Ukraine war, a signature promise he made for day one of his administration. I don't know, you tell me, sounds like it.
If for some reason one of the two parties makes it very difficult, we're just going to say you're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible people, and we're going to just take a pass.
I remember when Churchill said that, trying to bring the war to an end. You're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible. That's how you get there. Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor, and a special advisor to the Ukrainian military who's been on the ground throughout the war, Dan Rice. It's good to see you both. Happy Holy Days to both of you. So,
good to see you both.
Let's deal with the practical and then the tactical, okay? And not just because it rhymes. Dan, on the practical side, what does this mean in terms of how it will be used as an opportunity if there's any vacuum of American involvement?
I think what they're saying is they're going to abandon the ceasefire process. They are not saying they're going to abandon Ukraine. Big difference. So I think we've spent 90 days. President Trump has tried to negotiate a ceasefire peace. Russia does not want it. Putin does not want it. Putin is a horrible person, as referred to by the president. He is a horrible person. He just bombed people on Good Friday. He just killed innocent civilians. The United States, I believe, will abandon the ceasefire process, support Ukraine, increase military aid, and force Russia to the negotiating table later on. That's what I interpret this as. But I'd love to hear Ambassador Taylor's opinions, former ambassador to Ukraine, who has an honorary doctorate from the American University of Kyiv. Doctor?
Wow, very well done, Dan Rice, going for my job there, bringing the segue intro to my guest. I like it. Just a couple of quick points of correction. Not correction, just context. Trump wasn't talking about Putin. He was talking about whoever makes it difficult. It would be very interesting if he were to assign that directly to Putin. And second, of course, Putin kills on Good Friday. He's godless. He's godless. So it's not like he would respect it. Ambassador, I can't do better than Dan did in bringing you in. But tactically, we have seen the rope-a-dope from Trump on a regular basis now. Is that what this smells like to you? Him saying, I'm going to walk away. You're both going to be screwed. You better do what I want. But he's not going to walk away.
Chris, I think you're right. I think he's not going to walk away. And I agree with Dan that if there is one person of those two between Zelensky and Putin who is horrible, and who is foolish, has made some really bad decisions, it's Putin. It's the guy on the left of your screen there. And so that's the message there, that he is going, if Trump is using this to put pressure on Putin to come to the table by saying, I'm walking away, that's the message he's trying to do. He's trying to put pressure on Putin.
Although Trump's guys like Putin better than they like Zelensky, which is a weird part of the dynamic here. What happens if Putin uses it, Dan, this opportunity to do what we keep hearing about a press incursion, maybe with Chinese help from the East and the South?
Well, I do believe this is the beginning of World War III if we let it happen. We have to stop it here, and that's very important. You're already seeing the Iranians, the Chinese, and the North Koreans all conspiring against freedom fighters, against Ukraine. And on the 250th anniversary, keep this in mind, today is the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's ride. And so I think the message needs to go out to America that we need to fight for freedom. We always have, we always will. And right now, all we need to do with Ukraine is give enough ammo. We don't need to do much more than that. We give them enough artillery ammo, cluster munitions, destroy the 500 battalions that are in the field in Russia, the Russians that are in Ukraine. We will destroy the Russian army and they will cease to be an existing army within Ukraine. We can do it. All we have to do is give the political will and give the ammo.
Ambassador, Dan brought up an interesting piece of context there. Iran, he mentioned. I keep hearing that Iran is going to be, forget about what happens in Rome. They're going to start making their intentions known, not just with the Houthis, but look out for them in Ukraine. What does that look like?
Well, Chris, of course, the Iranians have been a big player by supporting the Russians, providing the Russians the Shahed drones for years now. So that, and the Russians can only buy weapons from two countries, Chris. It's only the Iranians and the North Koreans. I mean, even the Chinese have not overtly sold weapons to the Russians because they don't want to be sanctioned. The Chinese don't want to be further sanctioned on this thing. So yeah, the Iranians are playing the game, and it's a dangerous game for them to be supporting the Russians.
Ambassador, I wish you all good things. Dan Rice, please stay safe. You're going back and forth so often. Thank you for the perspective, and thank you for keeping me up to date personally as well. I appreciate you, Dan. Thank you for being my friend.
Great to see you, Chris. Ambassador, great to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Dan.
God bless both of you. Be well. 4 minutes and 15 seconds. So let's take a look at a big moment that is going to be revisited upon us. So remember at the Super Bowl, Kendrick Lamar gave that halftime show. Some people were kind of like, I don't know about this, but it wound up being like one of the biggest watched ever, 135 million people. Well, one person watching it did not like what happened and is now suing. And their name, or at least their stage name, is Drake. He says the performance defamed him and made millions believe he's a pedophile. Does he have a case? And does he have a real beef? I got answers to both.
Too tired, trying to strike a chord, and it's probably A minor.
His hopscotch game is weak, but supposedly Kendrick Lamar's music game is strong. The Grammy-winning song Not Like Us, a diss track against his longtime rival, rap superstar Drake. Some say accuses Drake in that song of being a pedophile. Lamar also performed that song at this year's Super Bowl halftime show, you may remember. The biggest audience of all time. 135 million of us and all around the world watched that performance. Now, in January, Drake filed a lawsuit against Universal Music Group, which is Lamar's and Drake's own label, accusing them of prioritizing corporate greed over the safety and well-being of their artists after they released Kendrick's song, Not Like Us. This week, Drake amended the suit, claiming millions who viewed the show were duped into believing he's a pedophile. The lawsuit reads in part, it was the first and hopefully the last Super Bowl halftime show orchestrated to assassinate the character of another artist. You know that famous line from the song, A minor, A minor. I thought it was about the chord. Now I'm told it's a double entendre. That's French. So, does he have a case, and is this a real beef? Why isn't he suing Kendrick Lamar directly if it is? Let's bring in founder of Hollywood Unlocked, Jason Lee, who will help me with the beef part, and legal analyst Misty Maris, who will help me with the law part. Thank you both. So, what's the beef between these two? How real is it? How deep is this? What do you think, Jason?
Well, when you talk about beef, I think about a time probably you remember back with Tupac and Biggie. That was a beef that led to the death of both rising superstars in the 70s, where the music bled into the streets and then literally the streets bled, right? This is the resurgence of what hip hop should be. I think Kendrick Lamar has lit a fire under the culture's butts, for sake of lack of better words. I think it's phenomenal for the culture. I think it's phenomenal for hip hop. I think the sad part is you never think you're going to have an artist get sued because they give you what you gave them. Remember, Kendrick and Drake were going back and forth with songs. This one just happened to hit harder and stick. And the masterful presentation from Kendrick as an artist has, with the double entendres, as you mentioned, with the visual aids, with bringing Serena Williams and SZA, two alleged exes of Drake's, into his performance in front of the world. I mean, it couldn't have been done any better, and it's excited me, actually.
Wait a minute. So do you believe that this is pageantry, or do you believe that this is punishable?
I think this is art. This is literally what hip hop is supposed to be. And typically when you've seen these type of going back and forth, it ends up in this dramatic, violent way. This has not been violent to anything other than Drake's ego. I love Drake. I've known Drake before he was a rapper, before he was famous. I love the superstardom he's been able to amass over the years. He is a creative genius, and he's always going to be one of the top 5 hip hop artists of all time. Unfortunately, his ego cannot deal with the fact that he has taken the biggest, fattest L that anybody has seen in years. And there's actually an interview he did with Angie Martinez when she was on Hot 97, where he was saying, oh yeah, Kendrick, if he wants any smoke, let him come and get it. Well, he heard you, he came years later, you got it, and now you can't handle it, and now you're in court. I can't even tell you what this is, Chris.
Well, I got to tell you, Jason, I appreciate the context. Thank you. And the compliment that you go Tupac and Biggie with me. When I think beef, I go to Cuomo D. That's how old I am. When you said, well, beef, I go to Cuomo D, Big Daddy Kane, and LL. Ladies love Cool James.
I don't go that far back, Chris. I'm sorry, I don't go that far.
I know. That was very nice of you, Jason. So, Misty, on the legal side, 2 questions. One, when does a beef become a legit cause of action? And 2, why not go after the artist?
Yeah, so not the first time a beef results in litigation, but let's start with why not go after Kendrick Lamar? Well, it's because of what we just talked about. They're exchanging barbs in their songs. Drake calling Kendrick Lamar somebody that was domestically abused his girlfriend in one of his songs. So there's the doctrine of unclean hands. Also, so much deference to artistic works. It would be a difficult argument. So he's going up against the record label, and it's about distributing and promoting material that the record label according to Drake, knows is false and defamatory. So it's a bit of an uphill battle because of that deference to creative works. It's also the actual malice standard when you have a public figure. That's why you see so much about what they knew that they're exploiting him in this legal complaint. And the third, that it has to be stated as fact, not something that's an opinion or something that's a hyperbole. So those are some of the challenges. But this supplemental complaint, Chris, it's so interesting. It focuses on that, now iconic Super Bowl performance. And Drake's team says the exclusion of the term certified pedophile at the Super Bowl in that performance, because he wouldn't have been allowed to perform it using that language, actually proves the point that it's common knowledge that calling somebody a pedophile is defamatory. So they're using it to bolster the case. And they did have a legal victory. They're getting some discovery. A lot of these cases get thrown out at the pleading stage. But again, uphill battle. But this could really test the limits of where the First Amendment and defamation lies when it comes to rap beefs and other musical art pieces.
He's going to have a problem showing that his own label wanted to hurt him because they would only stand to lose. Anyway, Misty Maris, thank you very much. Jason Lee, appreciate you both. Rebirth and renewal. Best for the holy days. And when the Diddy trial starts, I'm going to call on you both early and often. Please be there for me and for the audience. God bless both of you.
Always, Chris.
We'll be right back. I am not anti-gun, okay? I am about taking care of your responsibility as a gun owner. And I am about us rethinking who gets weapons, okay? And yellow flag laws and red flag laws. I'm into that. I am a gun owner, all right? Full stop. Second, Good Friday. In Spanish and in Italian, they call it Holy Friday, okay? Santo is the word they use. They don't use good. Why? Because it's a little tricky. How is it good when it's about a crucifixion? Because the crucifixion is the manifestation of Jesus's volitional giving of his own life to forgive our sins. That God the Father would allow his only Son to be sacrificed for us shows the depth of the